Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're not just looking at history. We're diving into something that feels more like a forensic examination of time itself.
It really is. We have this stack of sources making an absolutely massive claim.
Huge claim.
They say they have mathematically solved for the exact date of, well, one of the most pivotal moments in history, the crucifixion.
And if you, like me, thought the year was, 30 AD, maybe 31, or the widely accepted 33 AD.
Well, our sources are here to tell you that all those assumptions are wrong. This is a rigorous day-by-day argument that calculates the actual date as April 14th in the year 32 AD.
That's a staggering statement. I mean, that moves the established timeline by a full year, maybe more. Why is this level of precision so vital to the people who put this together? Why not just round it off?
Because the entire premise here is based on prophecy, specifically the timing given to the prophet Daniel.
Okay.
Jesus actually held the religious leaders of his day accountable for knowing this exact date, the day of his visitation.
So if the calculation holds up,
If it holds up for the past, it doesn't just, tidy up history. It gives us a confirmed framework for looking at all other prophetic timelines. It could even point to very specific dates for the start and end of the church age.
so this is a direct challenge to traditional scholarship, and it's framed as a mathematical certainty. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission is to figure out how you get from a royal decree, centuries before Christ, to a final date,
Mm-hmm.
a journey of exactly 173,880 days.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we even start to anchor something that big?
We have to start with the prophecy given to Daniel in Babylon. The whole calculation, every single day of it, hinges on finding the exact start date.
The decree to rebuild Jerusalem.
Precisely.
Now, I know a lot of people listening will immediately think of, Ezra or Nehemiah,
Hmm.
but our sources, they kind of steer clear of the most common theories.
They do, and for a specific reason. They argue that a lot of those historical decrees were about rebuilding the temple, not necessarily the city itself,
Hmm.
the walls and the streets.
Which is what Daniel's prophecy required.
Exactly. The sources point to a decree given by Artaxerxes Leguminus II way back in Nenesh to 445 BC. They see it as the final executive order that allowed the full restoration to begin.
Okay, Nedja 445 BC, but to calculate 173,880 days down to a specific day in 32 AD, you need more than just a year, right?
Oh, absolutely. You need the exact calendar day.
You need the day.
And this is where the astronomical markers become so important. You have to synchronize the date with the Jewish calendar.
And their new year, Nisan, is based on the Spring Equinox.
That's the key. So the sources postulate the decree occurred precisely on the Spring Equinox, March 20th, negative 445 BC.
Why so specific? Why March 20th?
Well, they argue that ancient royal decrees, especially big ones like this, were often timed to align with major astronomical pivots, equinoxes, solstices, that sort of thing.
Okay, but it couldn't have been March 19th or 21st.
Because the first month of the Jewish calendar, Nisan, is determined by the first new moon after the spring equinox.
Ah, I see.
If the decree was even a day earlier, before March 20th, it would throw the entire astronomical alignment off. To make sure that final day, the day of visitation, lands perfectly in the Passover cycle centuries later, the start point had to be just right. March 20th is that perfect anchor.
Okay, that makes sense. We have our anchor, March 20, negative 445 BC. Now for the central challenge,
Yeah.
the math,
The big number.
the big one. Tell us again, where does 173,880 days come from?
It's a direct conversion from Daniel's prophecy. It speaks of 69 weeks of years that would pass before the Messiah arrived and was cut off.
So 69 times 7 years, that gets us to 483 years.
Correct. And to get from those 483 years to 173,880 days, you have to multiply by 360 days per year.
And right there, that's where this whole argument becomes deeply controversial.
It is.
Because I, and probably most people listening, we think in terms of solar year, 365 days. Using that would throw this whole thing off by years.
It would completely break the calculation. And this is probably the biggest departure from conventional dating. It's rooted in a very specific theological view of time.
What do they call it?
The sources call it Jehovah's time count. They maintain that in this prophetic context, the calendar is based on a rigid 30-day month.
Which gives you the 360-day year.
Exactly. A 360-day year.
But what's the rationale for that, beyond just making the math work out?
The rationale is it's deep. Many scholars who use this calculation believe that before Noah's flood, the Earth's orbit was perfect. The calendar actually was 360 days.
Wow.
They believe that after the flood, the celestial mechanics changed, giving us the 365-day year we have now. So the argument is that God uses his original perfect 360-day prophetic clock for these major timelines.
So you're not just comparing two calendars. You're comparing two eras of timekeeping.
Exactly. And the sources argue that this 360-day count is the only way it works. If you start on March 20 and out of 445 BC and use a 365-day year, you land somewhere in 29 or 30 AD, and none of the Holy Week dates line up properly.
It's only the 360-day count that locks it in.
It's the only one that lands you on the day of visitation.
This is where ancient math meets modern software. The sources claim they use BC and AD date calculators to check this.
They did. And the result is what gives them such confidence. The calculation between those two dates gives you exactly 476 years, 0 months, and 21 days.
Which, we checked, is precisely 173,880 days. What calendar systems did the software use to bridge that gap?
Well, to handle the BC to AD transition, it had to use the proleptic Julian calendar for the start date and the standard Julian calendar for the end date.
And it still works out perfectly.
To the day. They see that as strong confirmation that this prophetic timeline is independent of our man-made calendar shifts.
That's impressive. So let's get to the end point. The 173,880-day count ends on April 10th, 32 AD. This is the claimed day of the visitation.
And this is where the calculation delivers a huge chronological shock.
Okay.
When you align April 10th, 32 AD, astronomically, it was a Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath, not a Sunday.
Wait a second, a Saturday?
The sources call it Palm Saturday.
Palm Saturday. But Palm Sunday is a cornerstone of Christian tradition all over the world. How do they reconcile that?
It all connects back to the Passover typology. The sacrificial lamb for Passover had to be selected and then inspected for 4 full days before being sacrificed.
4 days. Right.
If Jesus enters on a Saturday, that gives you 4 full days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, for him to teach in the temple and be inspected by the priests.
That's a powerful connection. So if the entry was Saturday, April 10th, 4 days later would put the crucifixion on April 14th. Passover.
Correct. And crucially, the sources contend that this specific Passover fell on a Wednesday.
A Wednesday.
Which fulfills Daniel's prophecy that the Messiah would be cut off in the midst of the week.
A Wednesday crucifixion completely changes the timeline that follows, especially for the resurrection. It brings up the sign of Jonah immediately.
Absolutely. Jesus said he would be 3 days and 3 nights, 72 hours in the belly of the earth. If he dies late Wednesday afternoon, you have to count exactly 72 hours forward.
Okay, let's do it. Wednesday afternoon. So Wednesday night is 1 night, Thursday day is 1 day, Thursday night is 2 nights, Friday day is 2 days, Friday night is 3 nights, and Saturday day is 3 days.
Precisely. The resurrection would happen at the end of Saturday, April 17th, 32 AD, just before sunset, as the Jewish New Day began.
So the triumphal entry and the resurrection both happened on a Sabbath.
According to this calculation, yes.
That is a fundamental revision.
Yeah.
The sources are basically saying that the universally accepted Friday death and Sunday morning resurrection is mathematically impossible if you take the 72-hour requirement literally.
They're very firm on that. They say a Friday afternoon death to a Sunday morning rising gives you maybe 36, 40 hours in the tomb, max.
Not even close to 72.
Not even close. So for them, the Wednesday to Saturday timeline isn't a theological preference. It's a mathematical necessity driven by the 173,880-day count.
Does this 32 AD timeline support anything else into the details?
It does, yeah. It gives some circumstantial support for the length of Jesus' ministry. For instance, a rabbi had to be 30 to take disciples. If Jesus was 33 at a crucifixion in 32 AD, that gives you a very logical 3-year ministry.
Which pushes back on the 1-year ministry theory some people have.
It does, and it also corroborates a birth year of Natick 3 BC, aligning his birth with Rosh HaShanah, the Jewish New Year.
So once 32 AD is locked in, everything else just kind of snaps into place around it.
That's their argument. His birth, ministry, death, resurrection, it all aligns perfectly.
Okay, so now for the big conclusion. If the math for the first coming is this precise, how do they pivot and apply this to our time, to the modern era?
By establishing 32 AD as the year the church age was officially initiated and, empowered, that precise start date becomes the new baseline for calculating the duration of the church age itself.
Which brings us to the the famous 1 day to 1,000-year ratio.
Exactly. The proposed time frame for the church age is 2,000 years, often called 2 days in Scripture. So you just take the starting point, 32 AD, and add 2,000 years.
Which puts us right around 2032, 2033. But they get way more specific than that, don't they?
They do. Using the same kind of detailed methods, the source suggests that the end of Daniel's final 70th week, what many call the tribulation, could conclude on a very specific date, September 23, 2033.
Which is Rosh HaShanah, the Day of Trumpets.
It is.
And if 2033 is the end of that final 7-year period, that means it would have to start 7 years earlier, in 2026.
Exactly. So the source suggests that the end of our current church age, the resurrection rapture event, could therefore be in 2026, leading right into the start of that final 7-year period.
It's fascinating that the confidence in this future prediction is completely dependent on getting that historical calculation right.
That is the whole thesis. Since Jesus fulfilled the prophecies of the first coming with exact day-for-day timing based on this 360-day calendar.
The assertion is he'll keep that same exact timing for the next major prophetic event.
Yes, for the resurrection rapture event that closes out this age.
So to recap this whole deep dive for you.
Right.
We started with a decree in the Notice of 445 BC. We used a very controversial 360-day prophetic year for 173,880 days, and we landed squarely in 32 AD. This whole calculation forces a massive historical shift. The triumphal entry becomes Palm Saturday, April 10th, and the resurrection happens exactly 72 hours later on a Saturday evening, April 17th.
It is an incredibly compelling case, especially for those who prioritize this kind of scriptural calculation over more traditional dating methods. It removes the ambiguity and replaces it with what they see as mathematical necessity.
So here's a provocative thought for you to mull over today. If modern software and astronomical tools can confirm a 2,000-year-old day count based on a 360-day prophetic year, a calendar we've mostly abandoned, what does that suggest about the nature of time itself?
The knowledge is really most valuable when you understand it and apply it. This whole investigation suggests that the calendars we use every day are maybe just human approximations, and that this prophetic framework operates on a hidden, meticulous standard of its own.
Let's get wonder.
It does. What other critical dates in history might benefit from this kind of deep dive, this kind of calendar conversion to unlock a greater chronological truth?
A great challenge to how we see history and time. Thank you for walking us through this incredibly detailed and, well, revolutionary calculation today.
It's always a pleasure.